Hey y'all, welcome back. This is the video everything else in this series has been building towards. We've covered accumulation across time frames, the high chain and the low chain of PTOU and PTOD, and then seeking all of that across the time frames so that you can fully understand the sequences of that, trend lines, and measuring, right? So let's put all that together into this actual decision. Where do I look for my entry, Val, right? All right, so there's a few things I'm going to do in order, which if you watch the other videos, I've kind of broken that down. But before I get into the market, right, I go through every single time. Like I'm going to even, before I even consider an entry, this is what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to figure out where are we? Are we in accumulation? Are we in a PTO? Or are we in a PTOD? If we're not at any of those three, something's wrong, right? So you know that you have three possibilities in the market. Price is either going up or it's going down or it's accumulating. It's going to be one of those three every time, right? And once I understand where we are, I now start to look for my ranges. Remember, I'm going to go to my day and I'm going to mark up my day, right? And then I'm going to go to my 4 hour and see where are we? If we are on a PTOU, what point are we making right now? Right. Once I understand where we are, then I'm going to investigate and go further. Now I'm going to go confirm it. I'm going to go into my 4 hour and start to look for that. I'm going to go into my 1 hour and then I'm going to go into my 15 minute. And I just want to see that price is respecting whatever zones I have marked up. Right. And then understand where are we at this moment? Are we making a high point on the high chain? Or are we making a low point on the low chain, right? Where are we in this process, right? And then once I understand that, next I'm going to sync that up on my time frames and see, okay, on my 4 hour, we are trying to attempt to make a higher high. And let's say price has made that higher high, meaning it's higher than the last point. But I don't know if it's finished. And so how I identify that is I'm going to then go from my 4 hour to my 1 hour. Until my 1 hour candle is turning red or it's still green, then I know that yes, this is a high that's higher than the high, but it's not finished yet. It might still needs to keep going up. What do I do to confirm that? I'm going to go down to my 15 minute. If my 15 minute is still moving up strongly, then that's going to tell me it's not done yet. And if my 15 minute is still green, then I'm going to go to my 5 minute. And then I'm going to go to my 1 minute and watch it in real time, right? So obviously, as it starts to turn red on my 1 minute, my 5 minutes red, my 15 minute is red, my 1 hour is red, then I know what that next 4 hour candle is done, meaning that high point is done. This is now our new high. And now price has to make what? A higher low. So it has to now go to the bottom chain there, the low chain, and now make a higher low. And so at that point, that's what I'm going through these time frames to see where are we in this process, whether it's accumulation or PTOU or PTOD. Where are we in this process? Once I have gone through that, the last thing I'm going to really start to look at are my trend lines and measuring it. If it's accumulation, the only thing we're putting up is our box because we're putting up our yellow box and we want to see it break out. If it's accumulating on our 4 hour, then we know that we are now waiting for a PTOU or a PTOD. If it's accumulating on that 1 hour, that doesn't mean that price is not in a PTOU or a PTOD, because what that means is that price is struggling to either make that higher high or make that higher low. So then you have to watch that closely. And so if it gets in that accumulation, but it still is making a higher point, right, then we're still within the trend of the 4 hour if it was on a PTOU or PTOD, whichever. Or if your 1 hour is not accumulating, but your 15 minute is accumulating, sometimes what that means is that it is now finishing that high point. It's done making that higher high and it gets back into accumulation because it's now about to push down. Or sometimes price is just struggling on both sides. But either way, you can find a move there. You can either have an entry for a PTOU or you can also eat off of a breakout. Either way, an accumulation is a sign that you're going to make money, right? Now, how you go about it is what's going to determine, depending, like, let's just say we are on a PTOU on the 4 hour. If we're on a PTOU on the 4 hour, then it's an uptrend. So if I'm watching an accumulation on the 15-minute, am I going to be quick to jump into a sale? No, because we are currently moving up. And let's say price does sell off. You're not going to be upset about that because there's no way you could have predicted that. At that point, price would have broke structure. So you want to focus on trading what's actually factual, not on what ifs. You want to trade what's actually factual. And what would be factual is that 4 hour is on a PTOU, right? But the 15-minute is accumulating. And so depending on what's happening on the 4 hour, let's say price made a higher high, right? And it made that higher low and it's on its way back up to now go higher than the last point. Let's just say that. If that's the case, then that means what? That if price is accumulating somewhere within that 4 hour, it got stuck. Doesn't mean that it's not still going to make its way up. It just got stuck. So if that's the case and I see a breakout happening below, right? And it goes down on the accumulation, you're not overly getting into that sell because why? Why would I do that if I know price is trying to make a higher high? At that point, you're trading against what's happening. You see what I'm saying? And so you're going to wait for that break up because you know for a fact if it breaks up, it's going to go higher than the last higher point. So now you can have a more specific target. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So once we have that, we understand what's happening between those time frames and we sync that all up. Now we're going to draw either our accumulation box, like I was just saying, or you're going to draw your trend line. If a PTOU or a PTOD is already, in motion, you're going to draw a trend line. You're going to measure so that you can identify what's about to happen. Right? Let's just say it starts to shrink and it's like getting smaller and that candle is telling you, hey, we're about to pivot, we're about to shift, right? Only after it is finished, only after that 4 hours is finished, you can really determine that, right? Now, can you get in on a 4 hour candle if there's 2 hours left? Absolutely. Because if the 1 hour has told you, hey, we are finished making this higher high, the 4 hour just hasn't announced it yet, then you can start making your way down to catch up into that lower high if you want to trade. Remember, I talked about on the video, like when we are in a PTOU or PTOD, you decide how you want to trade that. You can get in at the bottom and just hold and just let it go until, your heart desire and just keep tracking it. Or you can compound and trade it to the high point, boom, trade it to the higher low point, boom, trade it to the higher high point, trade it, boom, down to the higher low point. Or if it was the opposite way, you can trade the lower high down to the lower low point, and then come back and trade it up to the lower high again, then trade it back down to the lower high low, and then go back down and trade it to the lower low. At that point, that's completely up to you, right? Okay. And so when you're looking for where you're actually going to enter, this is where it can get, like I say, you're having anxiety. You're like, oh my God, what is price doing? But if you see the trend happening, it's important for you not to jump in right away, right? I just want you to focus on what's happening, right? Because sometimes if it's already on a PTOU, you might be in the middle of the move already. And I don't want you getting in that yet. That's not where you want to enter. So here's the part that I want to make sure you don't get mixed up. Once you identify that trend and you're figuring out where you're going to jump in at, and maybe it's already in the middle of a candle and you're like, should I get in this? No, we're not going to enter in it on the middle, right? So in a PTOU, your entry zone is at the next point in the low chain. Meaning if price made a higher high, it now is making a higher low. And if you've already measured where that higher low may land, which is why it's important, even if you're not trading it, even if you're not trading that higher low, like you're not taking that sell and writing it down, even if you're not trading it, marking it is going to help you identify when the market has finished making that higher low, because then you know it's safe for me to enter because it's already hit these points that I knew it was going to hit anyway. So then you can gauge your entry based on that. Does that make sense? And so if it's holding that and it's not going below, then boom, we're finding our entry. We're finding our entry. And this is on the 4 hour, by the way. PTOU and PTOD is only found on the 4 hour. You only use the 1 hour, the 15-minute, and the 5-minute, and the 1 minute to help you further decide on what you're doing. But PTOU, we're looking for it on the 4 hour. Now, will price make higher highs and higher lows? On the 1 hours, yes. But sometimes there was a lot of liquidation and a lot of manipulations happening. So sometimes you get a lot of equal highs. But remember, that 4 hour candle has to continue to move. So you're getting 1 hour candles in there, and sometimes they're not going to always be synced, right? As long as that group of 4 hour candles is higher than the last group of 4 hour candles, then it's still moving within that structure, right? And so once we are looking for this and we understand PTOU price just made its higher high, now it has to go and make a higher low. Or if it was a downtrend, price just made a higher low, now it has to go make a lower low. And so depending on where you are when you get into the market, once you do all your measuring and you understand exactly where price is going to go, we're getting closer to, hey, this is how I'm going to enter. And so here's why you enter on the pullback period if you are on PTOU or PTOD. Here's the reasoning behind entering there. Because nowhere else in that sequence, right, at the pullback step, you already got the most confirmation possible. And so if you try to go anywhere, there's nowhere else in that sequence that's going to give you a cleaner entry, right? So if you've already got the most confirmation possible, you've built this scenario out without having missed the move, the prior candle already proved to you that, hey, maybe you got 2 points of confirmation, which I do have a video talking about that. You got 2 points of confirmation and it told you, hey, price made a higher high here, then it had a higher high than that high, then it had a lower, it had a higher low here, and then it had another higher low. You got 2 points of confirmation that tells you price has a pattern going. Right. And so the pullback is basically showing you, hey, is price coming down to stick to what it just did on those first 2 points? And if it holds, right, where that chain, that bottom or the up chain, if that continues to hold and your trend line on both says it should hold, then you're coming into your green light to say, hey, this next candle is likely to follow the same pattern as it has before. And so until price has already pushed itself into that process, you are not chasing anything. You're only chasing what price has already shown you that it is going to continue to do, right? And when this is going to create a better risk to reward setup. If you enter any earlier than that, right, or in the middle of a candle or before that lower high or higher high or higher low, whatever part of the trend you're trading, if you enter too soon and you don't have a confirmation yet, you will get swiped. And as we know, the market will swipe you and not care. And so once you get that confirmation, it's enough to have you understand, hey, it's now time to start finding my entry, right? And so I want to walk through this full checklist on a real chart. So let's walk through this. Let's just find an accumulation, right? Let's just say we got into the market and this is what we see currently. I'm going to put here as this is our candle that is going to be our candle that we are faking like this is the candle that is currently happening. Right? But obviously these candles exist already, but we're going to ask like, this is the only candle that's happening right now. And I'm going to do this so that I can fully find this on the 15-minute as well. Okay. So we're just going to add like, this is what's happening. So I'm going to go to my day, right? And this was right here at that time, right? This was that candle. So remember, first thing we're going to do, we're going to mark up our day. So remember, we're going to go to our horizontal line. We see that that's the highest price has been able to do. I like light blue. And then we're going to go down here and see that this is the lowest that price has been able to do. And that is blue, right? Once we do that, we're going to go to our 4 hour. And remember, we are doing a back test example here. All right. This is our 4 hour. I see a consistent range right here in our 4 hour, but I'm going to say this is accumulation. So we would put our box here to just create a smaller range. And here's why I say this is accumulation. Because price was on a PTOD here. And this candle that we're saying we're trading live has just made a higher high than the last high because this is the last high. That's the last high. So price actually just made a higher high. So if that's the case, right, I'm gonna just get our arrow here. Price was here and then it went over here, boom, and then it got higher. So price was starting to shift right here, but it still was getting here, capping down, boom. So we have our accumulation here. So I got in the market, boom, I see accumulation. So I'm gonna mark up my box here, all right, and say this is my accumulation. So since I got an accumulation, I'm gonna change this to a different color just because I'm using this to make sure we can find it on the chart. So now I'm on my 4 hour, and instead of marking up a range, I see accumulation happening right here, right? And now, once I have this accumulation, now mind you, remember we said that only this candle had happened. So we're looking at this as accumulation, right? So I have my day range. Let's say, okay, this is the highest price it's been. This is the lowest price it's been for the last few days. Now I'm going to go to my 1 hour and I'm going to see what story is happening on my, right? We found it. So on my 1 hour, I think I can, no, let's keep it just in case. On my 1 hour, what is happening here? This is our candle right here that we said we're on. On my, let me find our candle here. This is our 4 hour candle right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our 4 hour candle that's happening right here. Right? So on the 1 hour, hold on, I keep losing it. Okay, boom, it's right here. All right, remember where that was. All right, so on the 1 hour, price is making a lower a lower high here, meaning it's lower than this last low, but then once it's getting here, it's equaling out. So okay, we're struggling right here. Then price came here, right? Which this probably was a liquidity sweep to go grab some money. And then price came up here and then it tapped up and it leveled out over here with all of these candles. So I would call this a stack. So price is stacking right here. Then it came down here. And what is the main identifier that tells me price wants to go higher? What happened here? It made this lower low, but then what did it make here? A higher low. So that would have been an indicator. Remember, these candles, this candle don't exist yet. So I'm now saying, okay, this 1 hour is telling me that price wants to go higher. So when I go to this 4 hour, right? This is where we are. This 4 hour is happening, but that 1 hour is telling me that we are going to start shifting directions. And so when this new 4 hour starts here, it starts even higher. So you see how you can make the decision on the 1 hour? So meaning on that 1 hour, you could have bought just because it has already it has already shown us that price wants to go higher. So you could have made that decision before the new 4 hour even started, which gives you even a lower position in the market. Make sense? Right? So this already had made now, right? We're still in this 4 hour candle, but on the 1 hour, it's showing me that price is making a higher low. So then I already know now that that candle has closed, we're going to continue to go. So had I been watching this, I would have entered at the start of this candle. So when that new 1 hour started, I would have entered here. And where would I have put my stop loss? I would have put my stop loss here Because if we break that point, that means we might be going a different direction. I would put my stop loss there. So let's see where that is on the 4 hour. So I would have still been within this candle on that 4 hour, but I would have been what? Way ahead of the process, right? I would have been a part of this shifting of the direction. So then by the time that new 4 hours started, I would have been in profit because look, it never came back close to my entry. My entry was here and we never touched my entry again. So then you may say, okay, Val, but what about on the 15-minute, right? If let's say the 1 hour wasn't that clear, let's go to the 15 minutes and make it clear. So let's say you're looking at the 1 hour, but it's like, I'm not really convinced. Look what's happening here. Look what this 15-minute is showing us. This 15-minute is showing us what? We have a lower low here. Ooh, we have a higher low. We have a higher low. We have a higher low. So the 15-minute is also showing me there is a break in trend, right? So that PTOD that was happening started to shift long before this 4 hour is catching up, which is giving you a cleaner entry. See what I'm saying? Giving you a way cleaner entry. And so you understanding how these go together is just essential for you. It's going to change the game for you. And so how you enter then is totally up to you. I would have entered off the 1 hour start, but if you want to make it more precise, go on your 1 minute. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to go as far back, right? Let's see, because I'm trying to make this back testing real. Let's see. All right, we made it. All right. So let's just say, right, we have that arrow where the new 1 hour was starting. And let's just say you're trying to have a more precise entry, right? This arrow, it was that new 1 hour. What I would have done on this 1 minute is I probably would have paid attention and saw price is getting higher and higher and higher. And so here, honestly, you could have even had a more lower position, which was probably here. You see, like this had here as our 1 hour point. But if you would have came in on on the 15-minute, right? I'm sorry, this is the 1 minute. You actually could have got an even better position right here because price respected this so clean and it came up and it never and then this new 1 hour started. So you could even had a lower position here because this at this point is still slightly higher, right? We're still building. On the 1 minute, you may have a lot of equals, but it don't mean it's really following a structure. So it's important for you to not to get so hooked up on that, right? So we could have entered even lower if we came to the 1 minute and the 1 minute was showing us before that 1 hour started that hey, price is rejecting real hard because we got this whole wick here. So that means that 1 minute was showing us, hey, price is about to move even before it got to this 1 hour start. So that's why the 1 minute is, they say you can find entries on the 1 minute, right? Okay, boom. That's how I would have entered. So then you may say, okay, Val, when you entered, what would you have done? So once I entered, we see price is making higher highs. So we're on a PTOU. We are on an uptrend, meaning our PTO structure is in full effect. So then you would have to make that decision. One or two things can happen. Again, if you have a small account, I recommend compounding. If you have a bigger account, you can hold. It's up to you. I don't mind compounding because I'm not trading all day and I don't want to look at the market all day. And I'm at a place now where I like being able to compound trade it. So me personally, it just depends. Sometimes I would, so I'm not gonna hold you. A few things could have happened. You could have entered here and just held it and just followed price and made sure price continue to make higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, higher highs, higher highs, higher highs, higher highs, right? And just made sure price continued to respect it. And you could have moved your stop loss up to the new, let's say price was here and it made this new low. Then you could have moved your stop loss here. You could have moved your stop loss to this um higher low because you know that if you're going to be holding price, you know that price is never going to get back this low because it's on a PTOU. And then once price made that new low, same thing. You would have upped your stop loss here. So you could have made your profit stop loss grow. And you could have moved it up and moved it up and moved it up. I would have only moved it up based on the low chain because this is the decision maker of if price is going to shift. And if you was on the downtrend, I would only move my stop loss based on the high chain because this is the decision maker that price will shift, right? And so once you get into the trade, how you hold this is up to you. You may say, I want to get in this trade and let it go. Remember, these are 4-hour candles and say, I want to see what happens the next few days, right? And it has you held, price could have been, let's just even do a fake map of that, right? Let's see, this is a demo. Let's just do a pending. So let's say you enter, where do we enter? Here. And price eventually got all the way here. P. And I think most of you use 0.01 lots. That would have been 4 grand. 0.02, I'm sorry, 0.02 lots would have been 4 grand. 0.01 would have been 2,000. And then 0.03 would have been 6,000. 0.04 would have been 8,000. And if you're a person that goes even higher, 0.11 would have been 22,000. If you're a person that goes higher, 0.27 would have been 55,000. You see how crazy that is? And look, you only needed about 4,000 in your account to make 55,000. Crazy, right? And so you can make that decision once you get that entry, but guess what? It can only exist when PTOU is like it's clean and it's relevant, right? When it's relevant, it's like this is pure PTOU. This is pure, it's climbing, it's climbing, it's climbing, it's climbing. Once you get over here, right? You see we had over here, we had this huge sell-off, but price kept making higher lows. I'm sorry, it kept making lower highs. I get so tongue-tied over higher high, higher lows. It's crazy. But price kept making lower highs here, right? It just wasn't as clean. It wasn't as zigzagged, right? So would I consider this still PTO? Yes, because it's still respecting on this downtrend, but is what is not as clean. But if I get over here like 3 points that are clean like that, then it's like holding it is a lot more easier. But when it's like this and it's kind of holding that is a little bit more scary because you're not sure what's really, really gonna happen. So like for example, price made this lower high here and then it sold off and made this super lower low, but then it still respected here and made a lower high than the last high, right? But then here we're getting higher highs. So it's like when it's like this, I'd rather compound the move, meaning get in for this sale, let it make a lower low, get out, and then wait to see what price is gonna do. So it can go one of two ways, but in this case, it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful hold if you had held, right? Okay. So that is basically how we find our entries, right? And honestly, the key thing about this is, right, is that the more you practice putting yourself in position and finding the story of the market, the easier all of this is going to be to you. You're going to be like, man, this is like, I got this, right? And so just remember the full process, right? Let's go through that one more time. You're going to identify where are you right now? Is price an accumulation? Is it on a breakout? Is it PTOU or is it PTOD? It has to be one of those, right? And which chains are building right now. Whether you get in the market, price just made higher high. Now it's trying to go make that lower is trying to go make that higher low. What is it trying to do? Once you sync that up and you sync your time frames and you draw your trend lines, you mark up your zones and you start to measure your candles, then and only then, that's when you're looking for your entry. Right? You're looking for your entry on whatever pullback opportunity you see, whatever stack you see. That's where you're looking for what point in the high chain is it trying to make? What point in the low chain is it trying to make? Not in the middle of the move. We're not doing that, right? Only at the time of confirmation is what you're doing, right? And so what I want to make sure that you understand is that the more you better prepare the story of what you think is happening, the better and more clearer you are when you're in the trade, right? All right, let's keep building.